You can't imagine the day that I'm having. Oh, not the Zoom. My ring light just died right as I was preparing to get into it. And I'm devastated. I'm devastated because I had a really good highlighter on today. For those of you who are watching, I'm sorry. I needed to start that off with the crash out. It's been a really hard 5 minutes for me. It just died. And lighting is everything. Come on. Don't people know anything about Mariah Carey? Anyway, it really derailed what I thought I was going to talk about. But nonetheless, the show must go on. And so I had a couple of things that I wanted to revisit. First, I wanted to go back to the is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? Because when I talked about it, I completely skipped over the whole social media aspect. I said I wasn't interested in talking about it. And to an extent, that's true. But I kind of wanted to read in this paragraph. Again, I'll have this in the caption or the information box. This is Having a Boyfriend Embarrassing Now by Shantae Joseph. It was published in British Vogue on October 29th, 2025. I have a whole other podcast episode where I'm talking about it. So, quote, however, more recently, there's been a pronounced shift in the way people showcase their relationships online. Far from fully hard-launching romantic partners, straight women are opting for subtler signs, a hand on a steering wheel, clinking glasses at dinner, or the back of someone's head. On the more confusing end, you have faces blurred out of wedding pictures or entire professionally edited videos with the fiancé conveniently cropped out of all shots. Women are obscuring their partners' faces when they post, as if they want to erase the fact that they exist without actually posting them. Unquote. And I thought it was very interesting because I don't know that I've ever understood this thing about like, what's the big deal about putting your partner online? I don't get it. You can listen, when I had social media, because I was someone who went on and off of social media all times, but I just posted whoever I was dating. And then when I would come back to social media and I was dating a new person, just delete. What is anyone going to do? What is anyone going to do? Also, I kind of think it's funny when people don't take it down. I used to think that was crazy, but now I respect it. Like, no, if I looked really good in these pictures and there's no way for me to take you out of the picture, like, I'm leaving it up there. You can infer by the fact that I've posted a new boo that I'm not still with this person. It's funny, though. But I often think about how serious the internet is to people who are not in any way like to casual internet users. I understand if you are an influencer or a content creator and you take your online presence seriously because it's a hobby or a way for you to make money. What I've never understood, and I think I've talked about this before, but is like the influencerification of the normal average girl. Like, I've never understood, if you know only your friends and family follow you on Instagram, why are you editing your pictures like that? Because we can see you in real life. Like, I remember going to a school, and I went to a very smart college. There were like 2,000 people, and this girl would Facetune her face to hell. Like, really, really smooth. She was like 10 pounds skinnier. And then we would see her and we were like, blank, like, obviously you don't look like that. And she didn't have any sort of online presence or following. She actually had a private profile. So it was like, what are we doing this for? Like, it's always seemed like madness to sort of cryptically post, or the whole soft launching thing. And you can never convince me that the whole I'm not going to show my boyfriend is not rooted in anything other than you don't want other people to message him and potentially hook up with him. Like, nobody who's serious or secure in their relationship genuinely believes that Instagram posting them is a real threat to the relationship. The lengths that people will go, and then also if a girl is going to go investigating through your social media to try to find out, like, who is this person, she's going to get him another way. Just wanted to let you know. Like, if she's that determined, she's going to get him. What can you do in that situation? Just so annoying to see someone like, oh, I'm blurring his face out. I'm cropping him out. Like, nobody knows who he is. And it's like, for who? For who? And then it's even worse, the people that encourage that behavior, because I know people are like, oh, well, nobody cares. But here's the thing. People genuinely do care. They're like, oh my God, like, you've posted. I saw a post and it made me think about, I am not one to say that the kids are not all right? I don't like drawing age, generational lines in the sand. I will say, though, that when we talk about Gen Z, there has to be some sort of difference between the people who experienced adulthood before the pandemic and the people who came into their adulthood during the pandemic or after, in this like post-pandemic world that we live in. Because I do see a difference. I remember there being a levity to the post 2020 world that we still haven't gotten back to. And it's confusing to me because materially things are still bad. Like, yes, you can argue that the job market is not the same as it was, but when I was in college between 2015 and 2019, and again, graduating in 2019 felt like getting the last dropper out of Nam. It was like when I went to college and I was born in 97, everyone was talking about like, oh, this is Gen Z going to college for the first time, and like Gen Z are adults and they're now entering the adult workforce, and like, what's that going to be for them? But everyone who was older was, I think, like much younger millennials, and there was very much this sense of, we're never going to get Social Security, we're never going to be able to get houses, we're going to die in the student loan debt. Let's dance. Let's have fun. Even when Trump was elected president the first time, again, I remember how horrible it was. I remember going to protest, but there was also, again, this sense of like, let's dance. And there is a seriousness that I don't see with people. And I'm like, because we don't give enough credence to like how psychologically horrifying it was to have to stay in your house under the threat of death, of like, I could get sick, I could die. People in my neighborhood, my life, my vicinity, even if it wasn't someone you were close to, like, of someone that died during COVID, of someone who became disabled, whose life was radically altered during COVID. And I have to imagine that took a serious toll when in your like foray into adulthood, your messiest, kind of sloppiest years, everyone's afraid of germs. Everyone's afraid of like popping out. Like, they're so serious. My sister is 23. I have a big group of friends, and they, range from like their mid 30s to like their early 20s. And oh my God, my early 20s friends. And I've had this conversation with them in person. It's like a seriousness, like a button up, like we have to take life so seriously. And I'm like, I think it's because you started adulthood in a global pandemic. There's like a rigidness, which is why I say like maybe that's how a distinction can be drawn. And also the seriousness of social media. Not saying that social media was never not important. Like, I, in real time throughout high school, because I think, that's when Instagram first came out, throughout high school, watched Instagram go from being something you post on casually to like caring about the aesthetic of your feed. I think having never been a social media user when it was all casual would probably, like, that would rankle my mind. That would do something to my brain. It would do something to me tremendously to see, like, there's an emphasis on curation with people in their early 20s that I don't quite understand. I think I would, and like, especially like teenagers and my teenage siblings, and like sometimes I hang out with like their friends, and I'm like, I don't know. It's a seriousness. I also can't remember how I got to this point in the topic. You guys seem to really like the last ranting episode, and so I was like, oh, let's just go on some more with some other thoughts that I haven't explicitly thought out. The fear of being perceived in any way, I think, is a big hallmark of Gen Z, but particularly not wanting to be negatively perceived, like not want to make the wrong choice or have anything bad out there about you, that I think puts them in like a very conservative prison. And I have to say this about the rise of conservatism in Gen Z. It has been so weird. When I was, honestly, up until COVID, the memes were about kind of being a dirtbag. Like, those, it was about like, I'm going to get super sloppy drunk. and hook up with 2 guys in one weekend, and I'm not going to give them my real number. And like, that was the dominant meme. And it was like it was Sleazy by Kesha. That was the vibe. To watch that shift, to start seeing 22-year-olds on my For You page be like, celibacy, what? They're just so much more serious than I was at that age. Even now, like, I met, I was at a party, and there's like an acquaintance, friend of a friend, and I'm like, you are so much more serious than me, and I'm 28 and you're 20, and like, I have a real big girl job, and I have fun, and like, why is that not... I don't know, and they're so judgmental. They're so, and like every generation is judgmental, right? Like, this is not to say that boomers didn't have their own issues, but it's the judgment of like there are real consequences for it. I don't know. That seems vague. Does that make sense? It's, again, to go back to the whole like, is having a boyfriend embarrassing now and posting it. I very much think, as I've said in other podcast episodes, that the internet is its own distinct culture, and that's what I was talking about, casual internet users. The most casual internet users, I don't think, are forced to learn who's really shaping like the internet's values and mores and like what we consider to be acceptable behavior. I've talked at length a lot in season 2 of the podcast about how what's socially acceptable is dominated by people who were pushed out of like in real life interactions, and now they have to primarily rely on the internet for their sense of socialization. And so they carry with them and they embed the internet with a lot of antisocial behaviors and takes. Like, in real life, if you were in a group setting, an icebreaker, and you said like, I think it's weird to have a big friend group, people will look at you. That is a deeply antisocial thing to say. But you can get on the internet where, you know, the people who are the most heavily invested in it, who are spending the most time in it, are spending the most time there probably because they don't have the ability to have these in real life interactions, and because they're getting rewarded for takes on the internet in a way that would make them ostracized in real life. They're like, oh yeah, it is weird to have friends. People, every day I see a TikTok that's like, you know, it's I don't trust girls who have like more than 10 friends, or like, how are you guys having big Friendsgiving? And it's like, put it very simply, not every person that you're friends with is your closest friend. Some people you just see in one specific situation, but when it comes time for like holidays, yeah, you gather around. That's the fun of it. And I don't know if it's this emphasis on like every person needs to be your bestie, every person needs to be super close, that's causing people to be more isolated, or the fact that they don't even have close relationships with one person, so it feels more fulfilling to just insist that something's wrong with everyone else for being able to maintain like the basic tenets of socialization and keep a wide social circle. But it's weird. And young people who use the internet, by the way, 1 in every 3 internet users worldwide is a child. That is from the World Health Organization, so 18 and under. And the second biggest population of internet users are like young adults, right? And so they are imparting this like surveillance thing, or maybe it's sort of a loop where you see on the internet in real life, like, everyone's monitoring, and so you take that into the real world. Like, most of the time, what I notice with sometimes a lot of my younger friends is there's a lot of emphasis on recording things and recording yourself having fun. Then there is an emphasis like being in that moment and having fun, and that differs a lot from my friends who are in their 30s who also grew up with social media, but it was about like you wouldn't spend... They don't spend more than like 5 minutes taking the picture. You meet the wrong 24-year-old, and now you're spending like a whole photo shoot in the club, and it's like, wait, I don't know. It's very odd. I had to get that off my chest. I don't know if I fully worked through it. But it's this seriousness, and I don't think, and I also see it played out with a lot of younger kids, because like I said, I have 6 siblings. 2 of them are 18 right now, 2 of them are 13. There is just, it's affecting the kids, man. Like, it's not as lighthearted with them, and it really makes me sad. It has like broken my heart. That culture of like death and germs and being being, like death is ever present. It really traumatized a group of people in a way that, like, I also don't think we're giving them enough grace for. Like, whenever I see those teachers and they're like, oh, my kids are crashing out, and it's like, yeah, well, because some really terrible things have happened to them. That feels like a sort of natural reaction. Anyway, that's not what I actually wanted to talk about today. What I wanted to go back to was the posting thing, and I got on the subject of like younger Gen Z, or how that's sort of, the Gen Z in their early 20s. I have never understood the average person acting like an influencer online, and I don't know how we all normalize that behavior. Not the pursuit of trying to become a content creator, but the idea that, like, you should lie about your life on the internet when people in your life know exactly how you live. To an extent, we've always been lying to each other, right? Like holiday cards, Christmas cards, they're going to come out and everyone's going to only put the highlight reel of their years when they do like their family newsletters or whatever. But I find it fundamentally confusing that everyone has kind of accepted that as truth. Like the same adults who were giving me lectures about you can't believe everything you see on the internet, who are now like blindly swallowing all the slop from AI, but also believing, like not realizing that everyone posts their highlight reel. I don't know, this feels all like so maybe 2010, like pardon me if this feels a little bit repetitive, or if this feels like something you've heard of before. But this whole idea of not wanting to post your boyfriend goes back to these cultural feelings of like, I don't want to feel embarrassment. Like one of my earliest episodes, Breakups Are Not Failures, talks about the fact that you didn't fail in anything because your relationship didn't work out. That's the natural course of life. Your relationship is only probably going to work out with like really one person, or if you're polyamorous, like maybe a couple. Like you're not like every person who is your lover is not the love of your life. And why is that an acknowledgement? Like people treat boyfriend, girlfriend like it's a blood oath. Nothing is a blood oath until marriage. You can at any point just break up with someone. Like when I think you're in a marriage, do you think you should make it work and like work through some issues? But boyfriend and girlfriend, no. No, that's actually ludicrous. Particularly if you're young and they're young, and it's like, you guys didn't even grow up yet. Like even, I don't think I'm old. Even at this age, 28, there's still things where it's like that just might not be worth it to work through, because realistically, like couples that go through these trials and tribulations with each other, it's like, for what? Breaking up is fine. And I feel like people are so reluctant to want to go through like the whole breakup thing that's why they take comfort in situationships, which I know I don't like to talk. I know I've made the rule on this podcast that I don't like to talk about situationships because, like I've said before, it is putting yourself in a prison, and I cannot feel sympathy for you when you are in a cage of your own mind and you can walk out at any point. There are no bars around you. Nobody has to sneak you a key. Like you are just in there. You're choosing to like eat poop, and I don't know why you're doing that. But to really get into it, I feel like it is not embarrassing to have multiple boyfriends in a year. And I have seen takes from young people online where it's like, oh, she hard launched like 3 people this year. And it's like, well, there's 12 months in a year. Yeah, that feels fair. I also don't think you have to date someone for a super long time to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Really, the way that I believe in breaking up is like, if y'all want to date after like a month, why not? Why not? You can just break up. Don't get married after a month. That's crazy. You know what I mean? Don't get engaged. But like, who cares? And people think it's less embarrassing to have like a long-term situationship. And I don't care what you call it. Certain things you do with another person where you know you both like each other and you know each other's like friends and perhaps family, and you're spending significant amounts of time with each other. That's just your boyfriend or girlfriend. Or your they friend. It is someone significant and important to you. Like the label is just it's like a shorthand word to describe what's going on with everyone else, but I don't know what else you're calling it. It seems a little bit ludicrous to like die on that hill that, oh, we're not anything special to each other. And the whole soft launching thing just feels like a way to lean into that as like, oh, well, there was no cultural cool points lost because, you didn't actually know what my boyfriend looked like. So I didn't really launch them. It's just subtle signs that I'm happy. And like, that's insane. That's insane. Not to mention what I find to be a lot of situationships are very manipulative. If a person tells you, I don't want to be with you, and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to keep going out with you and having sex with you in the hope that I can change your mind, that's manipulative. Like, they're not the bad should they perhaps walk away because they know that you have different feelings than them? Yeah, but like, you're also not walking away yourself. Like, it's not if nobody's holding you hostage and you're continuing to do these things in the hope that like, I played into it, I did all of that stuff, like, it's not a vending machine where you get to put in a certain amount of like affection tokens and then they have to love you. I just find it very interesting that people genuinely seem to believe that that's an appropriate thing to do to others. But you could say that this entire podcast exists because I am genuinely perplexed at what people find or believe is appropriate to do in any situation. I think it's weird to record strangers and make them content. I think it is weird how much the contentification of everything has eroded like everyday life and how much people don't seem to have a problem with that. I have a problem with putting my close friends and family on my social media page, and I always make sure I clear it. Like, hey, I do have a small presence on the internet, and that's just something you should take into account if you want to be posted on my page. I cannot imagine getting in the intimate lives of other like complete strangers and just making them your background characters and then blaming them and treating them poorly because they didn't act the way that you wanted them to. It's so weird, sorry, I had to raise my chair, and bizarre, and like, for who is this for? Like, dating content has always felt so sinister to me. There is something so weird about getting home and going through the intricacies of dating another person. And I know, like, that's why you're single. First of all, nobody would want to date that. But second of all, you're not when you build an audience off of trauma or talking about the worst things that ever happened to you or like the salacious things that happened to you, you're not building an audience that's invested in you as a person. You're building an audience that's invested in your, like, for the entertainment you provide them. You already run the risk when you're a content creator that people see you as a source of entertainment first and as a person second. Even the people who might say like, oh, I think she's a person, like, you are entertainment, and that's fine, and I've accepted that, but it also means that as a creator, I'm very cautious about what personal life or what personal information I'm willing to share. And it makes me nervous and sad for other dating content creators because people will just give you advice so that they can watch you crash out. Like, I have watched people give some big dating creators terrible advice in their comments simply because they know it's a bad idea and they want to see the content of the crash out. They're not actually invested in like you finding your person, because someone who's invested in you finding your person would probably tell you that you are screwing yourself out of a normal person who would want to be with you, unless they're also a content creator, by talking about the intimates of your dating life and coming home and ranking someone on a scale of 1 to 10 when you barely know that person, when you've hung out with them once. Like, that is friend group chat behavior. Another thing that boggles me, especially about TikTok, is when people take their most personal, intimate problems to TikTok. And then they're like, if you're my friends and family, scroll. I cannot imagine, like, unless I was truly isolated and didn't have any other friends and the internet was my only outlet, I cannot imagine getting on the web and being like, I don't know if I really like love my boyfriend, or like, should I leave my partner? I'm having some issues with my sex life. And it's like, you didn't want to get on Reddit. Like, you wanted to put your face behind this. Do you feel frightened? Especially because the For You page is just pushing this out to your friends and family. Like, that's how it works. It goes to your friends and family, people in your area first. And if they like it, then it gets pushed on the For You page of people who are kind of unrelated to you or not in your general vicinity. That's the craziest part about it all. I don't understand that. I don't understand why that would be the first thing. Like, being so desperate for wanting your moment that you're willing to like contentify your worst moments for what? For what? I can understand why an influencer would do it, but like you're a regular person, you have so much to lose. People do judge you for the stuff you put out online. It is a big deal. And I also don't think most people are prepared for it. In this podcast, a couple times I've said the most casual internet user, when you are forced to know the internet for the purposes of your hobby or your job, you really truly understand like what a frightening, unhinged place that it is. And I'm not talking for the usual reasons like, you know, the exploitation of children and animals and abuse and those things that proliferate the internet and are part of our culture. I just mean how many people are genuinely unstable, and because it's the internet, how much interaction you are going to have with someone on the other side who's not right. Like, part of the reason why I don't go back and forth with people online is because I don't know how stable the other person is, like on the opposite side of the screen. And so it's not worth it taking it there with a person who doesn't understand like limits and boundaries and who also has all the time in the world to want to go back and forth with you. It's not worth like the clicks or the views or like the gotcha that I could get by leaving like a witty little insult, because I have so much to lose from a person who has nothing to lose. Right? You should always be afraid of people like that. I don't know. Is this making sense to you guys? It's just, I just feel like we're not in a fun era, and I feel like it's not just me personally who's not being fun, but it's like I want everything to kind of feel like Zara Larsson's Midnight Sun, and it feels like everyone is so attached to doom and gloom. I also wonder, and this is a good segue, when I was a teenager, the big internet trend, especially on Tumblr, was kind of glorifying mental illness, typically like depression, self-harm, eating disorders. It was a really big thing to identify with that. And what I think was maybe well-intentioned to be a safe space for people who were struggling with those mental health issues kind of turned into people who were sick, like feeding off of each other and encouraging each other in the worst ways. And there was a lot of internet discourse at that time and for years afterward, when like the heyday of Tumblr, you know, like when, if you didn't know this, Tumblr used to feature adult material on their website, and when they got rid of adult material on their website, the interest in the website completely plummeted and people just stopped using Tumblr altogether. They also enacted a lot of like strict adult guidelines that just made it hard to, like, I remember walking away from the platform. A lot of people walked away from the platform, and for years, and it's been the subject of like peer review, like it's been in the zeitgeist that there was this thing on the internet where children, primarily teenagers, were developing mental illnesses by being exposed to people who were suffering tremendously from mental illness and being encouraged to sort of see those things as socially desirable. And you did get social clout for being like, this is how much I starved myself today, or, you know, like, this is what I can do to my wrist with a razor. Just really horrible thoughts. It's interesting that I don't see that as often, which may partially just because I'm older, but also we've moved away from that. And in a way, I think some people are trying to cope with that by moving towards conservatism. As I've talked about in past episodes, like, people embrace conservatism because it offers a very rigid black and white way of seeing the world that is particularly comforting in times of chaos and distress. Like, there's a reason why whenever there are events like pandemics, or war or unrest, economic uncertainty, people turn to, you know, conservative traditional models and ways of life, because it offers the hard part about discovering like who you are, where you fit into the world, how do you cope with these things has already been done for you. And it is a safety feature and a safety model. Not maybe like a safety model, but it provides like safety in calamity, and it is a guideline. And I sometimes wonder if the push away from glorifying serious mental illnesses. Like, there are things that were posted in my teen years that you just couldn't put on mainstream parts of the internet now. I understand that there's still spaces in the internet where like eating disorders are still glorified and like self-harm and drug use, but it was popular on Tumblr. It was mainstream popular. I remember kids talking about it in my school, and it didn't matter like which school you went to. And I've connected with other adults my age, and we're like, oh my God, like I can't believe this was such a big part of my youth. If you had the internet, even if you weren't into it, you were at least aware of it in a way that I think kids today, at least I'm hoping, I don't know if maybe again, I just haven't been exposed to it, are not suffering under. And I wonder if part of this is just people who moved into like, oh, I want to be traditional because that was so detrimental and scary for them. Because the thing about developing, you know, an eating disorder off of Tumblr is you have to live with the mental and physical repercussions of that eating disorder for the rest of your life. Like, it doesn't go away just because you turn the laptop off. Once it's, you know, a disorder, you need treatment. Like, it's I don't know. I've always thought about what are the links between those two things, and I feel like we made so much progress in terms of, you know, don't glorify being sick, and like, you know, you do need to overcome these issues to sort of go outside and be social because that would be good for you. But the way that people want you to be social is very like structured and rigid. And so it's like taking a step forward, but then also taking a step back. And now it's just kind of like terrible in a new way. I don't know. And I'm trying to think at what age I stopped noticing that, like, that really awful toxic shit just being on the internet, or at least being as popular on the internet. Because even after I think Tumblr closed, I remember I was seeing tweets where people were like, you know, like Gen Z is not going to get better because they glorify mental illness. And I don't think that's as big of a deal now. I don't think it's as ubiquitous in internet culture, which I'm grateful for the kids of today. But I'm also scared of what they're facing. Yeah, I don't know. So I'll leave you with an article from The Atlantic. It's the recommended reading, but I also, I don't know, I wanted to read a passage of it. And also, I really hope you guys do read the articles that I recommend. I spend a lot of time picking them. So this is Whatever Happened to Getting to First Base. This is from The Atlantic. I always share a gift link so you don't have to worry about paywalls when it comes to The Atlantic. And it is talking about, well, I'll just read you this. Quote, today, though, many young people consider the bases and the tidy progression they offer a relic. Sophia Chakas-Bradley, a University of Pittsburgh psychology professor who researches teens and young adults, told me that the only time she heard Gen Zers, also known as Zoomers, the people born from 1997 to 2012, use the base system was ironically with first base, referring to, say, oral sex. The way Gen Z talks about sex and dating instead involves an explosion of new language, if that's even the right way to put it. The linguistic acrobatics suggest that they haven't come up with new slang, but have also evolved a novel form of communication, unquote. And it talks about the, I think, difficulties of capturing, like, you know, what Gen Zers in the South are still very much following their parents and getting married at very young ages versus people who live in cities. But very much this idea that there's no, like, the way that there's no universal base system, the way that the internet has diversified what we're all experiencing. And I think we're really, and also millennials, like the experimental generation of, you know, what worked and what didn't. So that little soundbite was just to get you to read the article. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and to remind you that, again, you know, I put work into the recommended readings. I would love if you read them. It mean a lot to me if you did, but I'm very excited for I don't know, you guys to listen to this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps so much in the algorithm. And thank you to everyone who's helped the YouTube channel grow so much. If you're listening to this on any podcast streaming service, make sure to go ahead and give this podcast a 5 stars, recommend it to a friend, put it on your Instagram, shout me out, and feel free to hit me up. I always love to hear from you. Until next Monday, I will see you next week. Mwah. Bye.